We're joined by Afzal Ashraf, a security and counterterrorism expert from the University of Nottingham's School of Politics and International Relations. Thank you for joining us on the program. What could we expect the Taliban government to look like?
Well, I think we've seen pictures of some of its leadership. What they have been saying is that they want a government that's representative of all the Afghans. And so what that looks like isn't entirely clear. There are reports that they've reached out to the former President Hamid Karzai, to the former Deputy President Abdullah, and they are, it appears, genuinely looking for people with experience in running a government. They appear to recognize that they don't have experience and certainly don't have expertise in what is required to run the government. So I would guess that there would certainly be some form of interim government, which will comprise a great many officials from the current government or the previous government, and perhaps some who have retired or been voted out might return. So we will see what that looks like. In the long term, whether they have elections, which they have sort of indirectly hinted at, or whether they select on the basis of representation, perhaps from the ethnic minorities, such as the Hazaras and the Tajiks and so on, remains to be seen.
And there are ideological differences within the Taliban, some members being more moderate and others being more hardline. How could these rifts affect the forming of a government?
Well, that is a very good point, and I think that is something that may not actually affect the forming of the government for the time being, but it will certainly affect the power plays within the Taliban in the medium to long term. One of the reasons for the rifts is that the Taliban leadership that appears to be very moderate and enlightened has changed, and I think genuinely changed, because of their exposure to a different way of life. They've spent a good half a decade or more living in the Middle East, in Qatar, in the UAE. They've seen how highly conservative societies, such as the UAE and the Qataris, can live cheek by jowl with what is a very largely Western diaspora in those countries. And so they recognize that there are ways of achieving their conservative beliefs alongside a progressive country. And the problem is that the rank and file, their foot soldiers, have not had that experience. They've been very much relegated to village life, and maybe Kabul is their first experience outside the rural areas. And many of them will find it difficult to adapt to what is a new leadership version of what the Taliban governance should look like. And of course, that along with the fact that the Taliban, even now, even in this sort of moderate form, conflate religion and politics and power, means that anybody who wants to challenge this relatively moderate leadership can always fall back on the traditional, very hardline, extreme beliefs and say, well, that is authentic religion and our current leadership is compromising itself. So there are potential dangers in the medium to long term.
Now, geopolitically, the Taliban could well be recognized by countries such as China and Russia. Quickly before you go, in that case, does that mean the Taliban would even need recognition from Western countries?
No, the Taliban would like recognition, but they don't need it. And it would be in the interest of Western countries to recognize reality, because that is one way that they can encourage and support the things that the West cares about, such as human rights, particularly women and so on. And I think that would be a positive way in. Certainly the Taliban have encouraged the UN-associated charities to remain, and I think some of them are continuing to do their good work, and that would be one way of helping to progress the country and look after the ordinary citizens of Afghanistan who might suffer great deprivation as the finances are cut off, and we could have a humanitarian disaster on our hands unless the West take some positive measures along with the Taliban to look after the welfare of the ordinary citizens.
Afzal Ashraf, thank you so much for joining us here on the program.